Marianne, thank you so much for joining me. I'm getting really excited about the Women Who Build Summit. Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Laura. My name is Marianne Monte. I'm the Chief People and Administrative Officer at Shawmut Design and Construction, based all over the US, but our headquarters is here in Boston, Massachusetts. And that means I am responsible for the HR function, the marketing function, the IT function, and the legal risk function currently. And it's a wonderful place to be. I love working at this company.
So thank you, Marianne. You are going to be doing a breakout session for the conference, and I really love the title of this. It's what doesn't beat us makes us stronger. And I like how it says doesn't beat us versus doesn't kill us, because so what is it that resonates with you about just I tell people, I'm like, listen, I got enough character. I don't need any more character building experiences. Why do you think this is such an important topic for the entire room? We're not talking, we have all tenures, all specialties in the AEC universe. And so the audience is very wide and deep. And so what is it that you're really excited about with this particular topic for this particular conference?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have been in this industry for about 10 years now. And in that decade, I have not only come to love it, but, I think about the longevity that things that we build or design and how long those things last for. And for me, at every topping off ceremony, I'll write my son's name on the beam. And it's so cool to drive around the cities or the places where we build and let them know, listen, your name's on the top of that building. It's going to outlive me. It'll probably outlive you. And what does that mean for the challenges that we faced as an industry, right? That sometimes they take a while to fix, but you keep working on them. And for me, this discussion is one where in particular, and we talk about it a lot at Shawmut, women and underrepresented groups, this change arc feels like a long time, but we keep at it, right? We keep at it because we know we're going to be around a long time as an industry. And we know that the discussions we're having, like this one today, are the right ones to have in order to make good change happen. It's such an amazing point. Like, I think we've all been conditioned in the way in which our families or our neighborhoods conditioned us, right? Which for men and women, there were certain rules or conditioning you were supposed to follow. And I think we've learned so much from the benefit of having multi-generational workers, right? From literally sort of people in their 60s and 70s, even down to the 18-year-olds. There's 4 or 5 generations who work in our workforce today. And so I too have been like really excited about not just the change of the people coming in out of college who expect something very different than what I expected, or what the people who are a little bit older than me in the workforce are expecting. The change has, at least within Shawmut, has really been across the board. I assume nothing that, well, because they're a certain age or they're become of a certain generation, they think this way. And we talk about that conditioning a lot, and how actually our clients are the ones who have demanded some of the change. We tend to build for very high-end A-list clients. So when Apple calls and says, we want an all-female team to build out these 10 projects, can you do it? You better be capable of doing it. And so, it doesn't matter who takes that phone call. It could be someone in their 50s or 60s, a man or a woman or a gay or a lesbian. And really, it's wonderful to be able to say, yeah, we can do that. So I think it's not just within the industry, it's our clients have demanded that kind of different thinking, diversity, if you will, around the table as well.
My experience agrees with that assessment too. I have been a part of many debriefing meetings where they were like, we didn't have a diverse enough team, or, you're prepping for a proposal and a presentation. Like, no, this is the wrong mix. We know that the client wants to see a more diverse group.
And then I do think there's, you have to have a work-life balance. And I don't mean hours in the day. I mean, You know, the kinds of things we all talk about, good nutrition, good sleep, move your body once in a while. I'm not so great at that, but I try. And those are the kinds of things that I think, you know, if you can bring your best selves to work every day, our CEO talks about that a lot, that if you can come to work unencumbered by the things that are weighing you down, you'll produce better for the company, you'll produce better for the client. So, you know, it's sort of a, you know, mom and apple pie answer, but I do think a lot of those things help us know ourselves well and come in with the right attitude every day.
Well, and I don't think that's an apple pie answer. I think there's a lot, actually. There's a few things that if we had time to really unwrap, they get really interesting. You know, you mentioned about is that a personal attack on me? Like, you know, ... before and ... after. I often think of that. I think that as we grow up in the industry and we become older and more seasoned, it's easier to stand back and say that wasn't about me, because that's one of those, from my experience, that was a big, what I call moment of maturity that didn't hit me until I was in my mid 30s, for God's sake, when I sat back and I was like, oh, that's their problem. That's not my problem. Like, they're not upset because of me. They're upset because of them. But can you imagine? I remember the day that happened. Like, the first time it actually occurred to me that I wasn't responsible for everybody's mood and whether they succeeded or failed, that they were responsible. I'm mid 30s, for God's sake. And so that's, you know, one of those things that when you say meeting people where they're at, that's one of the things that makes those conversations about personality and team dynamics and all of that so important, because we're not all at the same place at the same time. And that was a big deal for me.
Yeah, no, it's so true. But again, I think as two women, we are conditioned to make it right, make sure everyone's happy, be nurturing, and make the people in the room feel better. And when you let some of that go, and to your point, say, like, this actually wasn't about me, but then I'm okay saying, listen, is there something else going on, you know, that you'd want to share with me? You know, as an HR person, it's easy to do. Maybe on a job site, it's not so easy, but, you know, because your reaction wasn't typical of how you'd react to something. Or do you always show up like this? Like, that must be really tiring, right? I mean, so there are things that I think, you know, we still are conditioned to try to fix things as women in this industry. But when we shed the, hey, this isn't about me, or that wasn't directed at me, and assume positive intent, it clears up a lot of the gobbledygook that happens in between.
It really does. And I think that for anyone who can't imagine that being like a true statement, then they probably need to examine their own honest intent. Right.
That's a great point.
And that's, yeah.
Yeah.
If you think everybody's a liar, well, maybe you are yourself, right?
I was listening to something recently that talked about, if you keep saying no to something, it tends to indicate that, like, there are other areas in your life you're not saying no to, and you should examine those areas, right? So if it's like, if you're at work and you're constantly angry or constantly pissed off about something, you really have to decide, is it really work, or is it just safe for me to do it there? And it's other areas of my life that, I mean, it sounds a little complicated, but realistically, it is a good test to say to yourself, you know, am I really angry about all these things here? And take stock, you know, and if it is, then you have choices to make, for sure. You know, none of us are bound to the current job we're doing. Lord knows that the talent movements that have happened in the last couple of years here have really shown that. But I used to have a boss who would say, listen, the way I think about work is that I have a box in the corner of my office of all the things that kind of irritate me about my job. And when that box starts to get too filled up and the top comes off the box, I take stock and I say, can I take up more room in my office with a bigger box? Or do I need to unpack this and make different choices? That doesn't mean you have to leave your employer. It might just mean I have to put myself first, or I have to change the way that I work. Maybe not check emails into, late in the evening. But a lot of that is within your control. And I don't always think we know that.
Well, I have to say, I'm really glad that this is being recorded, because you're reminding me of I did a project recently where I wrote a comprehensive leadership development framework, behavior based. And one of the sections that is covered is work ethic. And the reason why it's in there very, very particularly is because of a very specific definition of work ethic, which includes your attitudes, your behaviors, your character. Like it's an all encompassing definition of work ethic. And when I found that definition, I sat back and I really thought about that a lot, because when you talked about, that box and needing to unpack it, or angry about a lot of things, and all of that, and needing to sit down and really look at that, if you were looking at that through a lens that said, oh, when I'm doing this, I am not displaying a good work ethic, that completely changes the thinking of having a bad mood at work. And so it's a really impactful, like, words have meaning kind of conversation. Like if you can contextualize it and go, yeah, I'm an ethical person, I always am. And then you say, oh, really? Well, did you have a thorn in your paw today? You're like, oh, now that changes things, right? And so it can be so interesting to sit back and think about this.
It's such a good point. And I honestly think, and at my core, I'm an HR person, right? I do other things now, but realistically, it's really about people. And I often say, like, listen, Shawmut, Gilbane, Suffolk, Turner, we can all build the same building. But the people we bring showing up, hopefully with the right attitude and the right behaviors, are the difference maker for us. And I think that's true across the board. I often say, maybe because I was one, I'll hire a C+ student with a great attitude all day long, who consistently shows up with a positive attitude and a growth mindset, versus someone who's banging out work, angry till the middle of the night, even though they're getting a lot of work done. Like, to be part of a team, this is a team sport. Construction, AEC is a team sport. And so you need good team members on it. And you don't want to be playing with people who, men or women, who are showing up kind of irritated every day. So if you feel like you are, you have to unpack that box and make some decisions as to whether it's the right place for you, or whether part of this is you.
Been talking about, and I don't like these labels, but Gen X, Gen Z, this, that, the next thing. And I think that we've got boomers retiring, we've got Gen X that follows, then millennials, then Gen Z, right? Is that the right order?
Yeah, there's still some, I think they're called classics in the workforce and into their 60s, but yes.
Okay. Those ones. But I think that oftentimes when we are, the media is talking a lot more about, I think, the boomers, the millennials, and the Gen Zs. And that middle ground, and maybe I'm sensitive to it because I'm a Gen X, and it's right. You too.
Yes, me too.
And isn't it interesting that it's interesting? Do you get that idea too, that Gen X is kind of the lost generation in this conversation?
I do. I think we're the smallest percentage of the workforce, even today.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, so there's a ton of advice out there for millennials, and there's a ton of advice out there for Gen Zs, and people have stopped giving boomers advice because they're wanting to retire more and more frequently. But based on what you've learned, what advice would you give our generation with, the resiliency? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, it's so true. We're kind of caught in between the boomers who were idealistic and, and then a lot of folks changed after they got into the workforce, and they have these offsprings that are the millennials, right? So we are kind of stuck in the middle. We're the smallest generation, at least I think even in this industry, but across all industries at the moment. And I guess, resiliency is about where you add value. We're also shown, and again, I don't have any specific statistics around this, to be the most effective. And what I mean by that are high earners, really holding high positions. And I think because you are kind of that middle child and you're scrunched in between these two behemoths, you tend to make your own mark, right? And my advice to someone like me would be just keep doing what you're doing as long as you're enjoying it. And from my standpoint, and my peers who are my same age, you know, we've figured out how to deal with the idealistic boomer and their kids. And so in some ways, we're the best to bridge the gap for the next generation coming in behind them. So, you know, I guess it's sort of hokey advice, but stay the course and keep doing what you're doing, and know that there's another level of achievement if you want it. You know, I'm going to be in my mid 50s next year, and I feel like there's a lot of runway left. So, and I also feel like if this keeps working for me, I'll keep doing it, but maybe there's opportunity outside of what I'm doing to do something very different where, you know, I think the boomers are sort of, like I said, looking towards retirement right now, and good, that's a good thing for them. And hopefully all of our 401ks jump back so they can do that, make more room for the Xers to take over.
Oh, Marianne, I am so happy to get to talk to you, and I am really looking forward to your workshop. I think that that people have a lot to look forward to with this your maiden year at the Women Who Build, the first of many.
I'm really excited for the opportunity, Laura. Thank you so much, and really can't wait to see all the folks in the room in a few weeks here.